Okay, we're going to talk about glazing a clay sculpture. And a couple things you need to know about glaze. You can add color to your clay piece in multiple ways. You can add it with marker, colored pencil, oil pastel, and paint. But the only real permanent way to do it is by adding glaze. And glaze is a process in which you have to refire your clay piece, and it actually fuses itself to the clay and makes a more permanent color, as opposed to other colors that might rub off or wear off over time. So it reacts to the heat when you put it in the kiln, but we're using, once we're done, we're using food-safe glazes and really nice quality glazes here that create bright colors. You get that shiny, glassy surface. Like I said, it's food safe if this were gonna come in contact with any kind of food or drink, and it makes it more permanent for your sculpture. So keep those things in mind. When you're choosing your glaze color, note that what's in the jar does not always match what it comes out to look like once it's done being fired. So you really gotta pay attention to the swatches that I'll have available for you to look at, because this says dark yellow on it and it looks reddish in the jar, but after it gets applied to about 2,000 degrees, just under 2,000 degrees in the kiln, it transforms into this color if you apply it correctly. This is a green color, which looks more green, but it clearly comes out to be just a tad bit different than what you see. So it's not like paint in that it does transform once you put it in the kiln. Another thing to note about glaze, you can't mix them. You can't put two colors together like paint, mix them and get the same color back. Because of the different components inside of it, it's not gonna work out quite that well. So if you're gonna glaze your clay piece, first thing we're gonna do is make sure this is bisqueware. This has been fired once. It's rock hard and it's pretty thirsty. So I'm just gonna wipe it on with a brush and add my green color here just by dipping it in and putting green where I want it to. You may have to dab it into some of the cracks. You should still be able to see your texture and your design. It's better to get it inside of the cracks than to leave them unglazed, because then it'll look pure white and unfinished. So dab it in to get it in there and throw a coat on. This bisqueware is pretty thirsty. It'll absorb the glaze, the first coat, and you need to put at least 3 coats on. So this will dry pretty quickly, and once it's dry, you can go ahead and apply a second coat and 3 coats total. If you're not sure how many coats you have, go ahead and put a 4th on. You can put too much glaze on. If you really make it puddle, it can start to crack, so you don't want to put too much glaze on, but if you're worried about it, or if the glaze is kind of thin and runny, go ahead and put a 4th coat on. That'll make it nice and glossy and shiny when you're done, and have the colors turn out. As I mentioned before, we can't overlap. Our colors are mixer colors, so if I wanted to switch to the dark yellow color, yes, it looks red, but it transforms into dark yellow. I can't put it on top, so if I was going to do dots, I shouldn't put it on top. I can go next to it, but I don't want to mix the glazes. What's the worst that can happen if you mix them? They turn into some random color that you weren't expecting. The best that could happen is it turned out exactly how you wanted it, but just to be safe, I wouldn't recommend mixing glazes unless you want to experiment with new colors. So I'm applying this one and I'm being careful not to overlap where I'm going. So you would apply a glaze all over the whole thing, the top, the sides, but please do not to get glaze on the bottom of the piece, wherever it's going to rest on a shelf in the kiln, because if I get glaze on the bottom of here, it's going to fuse itself to the kiln shelf and we cannot take it off. So if you accidentally get glaze on the bottom, or you forget, I accidentally got glaze on the bottom, take a wet rag, a washcloth, and just scrub it off. The same goes true as if you get glaze on a part that you don't want, or you messed up your colors. You can scrub it off, let it dry, and then reglaze if you need it. But please keep the glaze off the bottom of the surface, keep it clean so that it doesn't get stuck in the kiln. So the basics here, make sure, again, apply 3 coats of every color. So make sure I have all 3 green, all 3 of this dark yellow. Make sure you're looking at what colors you want it to actually turn out to be. Cover everything, fill in all the gaps all over, and do not glaze the bottom. All right, I think you got it. Go ahead and try it.